Hey, what's up? Andrew Kramer here for VideoCopilot.net, and welcome back to another very exciting tutorial. And today we're going to be taking a look at jet strike and creating some cool smoke trails. So let's go and take a look at this example. Those great sound effects. So pretty cool. We're going to be using Trapcode Particular since it works really well with aligning to a specific point in 3D space. Now, if we take a closer look, we can see that some smoke is coming out of the afterburners as well as the side of the wings. What we want to be able to do is recreate that. So if we look closely, you can see we've got those smoke trails and they're locked to the position of the jet. So as we move the jet position around, it will actually affect those smoke trails. So as I spin it around, we can actually see the particles are actually animating with the movement of the jet. Let's go and set this up. I'm going to create a new comp and we'll hit OK, maybe make it 10 seconds long and OK. Then let's go and create a new solid and we'll go ahead and add element 3D and jump into the scene setup. And then we'll come over here to jet strike and we can go ahead and load one of our models. So let's load the combat jet number 3. Looks pretty good. Let's go to the environment map and maybe switch it to the town. This one actually works pretty good for a window reflection. Looks kind of like we're up in the air. And let's hit OK. And then let's create a camera. Maybe 80 millimeter. Hit OK. Then we'll take the camera tool, rotate around, and then let's push in, and the right mouse drag will actually push in. All right, so what we want to do is emit particles from the sides of the wings and the back of the jet. In order to do that, I need to generate a 3D position for those 3 points. So what we can do is we can scroll down here to the utility, and we have an option called Generate 3D Position. And what this allows us to do is select a 2D position, so say that point, and then generate a 3D null object. So now we have the absolute position for that point. We'll do it again. We'll come over here, generate, there we go. And lastly, the afterburner, and we'll generate. So we'll come to the back here. Now let's take that third position and just align it better, since I didn't quite select the right position, but these can be moved around just to kind of get a sense. What we want to do is generate particles from these 3 positions. But before we do that, let's create the lighting for our scene. So let's create a new light and we'll do an ambient light at maybe 50. And we'll do another light, like a parallel light at maybe 150. And we'll hit OK. The parallel light, let's hit P. And we want to move it up, so we'll just drag it up here, and then we want to move it back to the other side a little bit. So let's just tweak that position. And we could even bring the ambient light down just a bit. That looks pretty good. We could throw our background in, but let's go and emit our particles first. Now, in order to animate our jet, what I want to do is create a group null. If we come inside of group 1, we can come down here to the group utility and create a group null. So we'll click create. And so now we have a null and we'll hit return and we'll call this jet. Now we have a null that will actually allow us to animate it. So we can move it around, we can rotate it, and basically give us control to animate the jet in 3D space. Now let's go and create our smoke trails. Now to do this, we're going to be using Trapcode Particular and a light emitter. So let me show you how this works. Instead of using these null objects, I'm actually going to create a 3D light. So let's create a new light, and we're going to make the intensity 0, and we're going to make it a point light, and then we'll hit OK. This is going to be the smoke. So we'll type smoke, and what I want to do is actually move it into position of our null objects. So here's how we'll do that. Let's select the first position. And this is the null object on the wing, and let's hit P. And I'm going to select the position and choose Edit Copy, and then take this light and choose Edit Paste. So now I've moved that light right into that position. So now I'll just take that null and delete it. Then let's duplicate the smoke light, Control D or Edit, Duplicate, and take that other position, hit P, select it, Edit, Copy, and then we'll paste it into that light. So now we have our two lights. Now for our third light, let's duplicate that, and we're going to call this something different. So we're going to hit Return and type Afterburn. And the reason we want to make it different is so that we can create a different looking particle system for that particular light position. So now let's select the last null, hit P, copy the position, and then paste it into the final location. So now we can get rid of those null objects. But I want to keep our jet null object. Now here's an important step. We want the lights to stay connected to the jet even when the jet moves. So what we'll do is we'll select the lights, hold down Shift, and take the parent option, and if it's not up, just toggle the switches here, and parent it to the jet null. So now if we move this around, the lights will stay connected to the jet. Let's go and start creating our 3D particles. So we'll create a new solid, and we'll call this smoke. And we'll come over here and we'll type in particular, and we'll take particular and drop it onto that layer. And then we'll come into the emitter settings, and we're going to change it from a point to lights. And it gives you some information on how to do this properly. We'll hit OK. First thing we'll do is go into the options and change the emitter name to smoke. So any light that starts with smoke will emit particles from this layer. So we'll hit OK. And we'll scroll down here. Remember, we set the light intensity to 0. So instead of creating particles based on the light intensity, we're going to set it to none and just use the particles per second here. So check this out. We've got the particles emitting. We can probably just shut the lights off now. So we'll just turn these off and the particles will continue to emit. We're going to turn the velocity down to maybe 5, turn the emitter size down to 0, 0, 0. And in order to get this to work, we can move out here. We need to animate the jet. So let's take the jet, hit P, and let's set a keyframe for the position. And let's set a keyframe for the rotation. So hit R as well, hold down Shift, hit R. And let's see, we want to rotate the jet on a Z axis. So we'll keyframe the Z axis, move that keyframe over, and move forward a few seconds. So now we'll move the jet forward, and there we got our trails. So we can even rotate this now. And let me move my camera back to see this a little bit better. Now, one thing, we want to put the smoke below the jet in this particular shot. So check this out. So I think you guys get the idea here. Pretty cool. Let's throw a background in here. So I've got this aerial background. Maybe we'll make it a 3D layer. Hit F4, turn on the switch there, and let's hit AA on the keyboard and turn off Accept Lights. And then we'll just rotate the layer and just kind of shove it out there in 3D space and then scale it up. Okay, so that's good. We'll maybe rotate it to kind of match the direction of the jet. So there we go. This just gives us a little bit more depth here. All right, so let's just go ahead and play with the animation. So we'll hit P and let's speed the movement up. So let's start it so the jet's really far away here and then have it fly past like at a really fast rate. Now let's set up some of the particle settings. So let's just solo our 2 layers here. And let's go into the particular settings. And we'll go down to the particle settings and maybe we'll turn the particle size up. And maybe turn up the size random. We can turn up the opacity random, lower the opacity a bit. Make this a much more subtle effect. Now we want to give the particles a little bit more randomness. So a couple things we can do. One thing I might do is come down to the physics for the air and turn on a little bit of turbulence. So we'll go inside here, turn up the effect position, and that'll just give it a little bit of turbulence. We don't want to do too much. And we'll probably do less than that and bring the scale value down so it's a much wider turbulence. Then we want to add some wind. So let's add some wind maybe from side to side. Let's see. There we go. And this will just make it so that the trails aren't just turning perfectly static. Now, the other thing we want them to do is fade out. So for the particle settings, we could do something like opacity over life and just click on that preset so that they fade out. And another thing we might do is size over life. So if we go size over life, this can be a little bit tricky, but we want them to be small and then get bigger. So small and then get bigger, and then smooth out the result by pushing this button a few times. You'll see it smooths out a bit. Then we can turn up the full size, and now you'll see we get, a little bit of this kind of trail going on. We can also change the velocity from motion to be a negative value, and this will make it so that the trails fly further away. This is pretty good. Maybe turn up the particle density, and then we can just turn the opacity down a bit. And that way it's a little bit more solid. So that looks cool. And then to animate this, we might just hit A on the camera and animate the point of interest. So we can just pan over to our jet, maybe start the animation a little bit closer to here so that we see the trails the whole time, like maybe right there. And we'll hit B, and then we'll move forward, and then we'll pan the camera over maybe to here. And then we can turn the motion blur on for the jet and for the smoke and for the background. And now we're getting a nice little animation. So let's take a look. All right, very nice. Nice slow flying jet. Obviously to change that, you can just animate the null object to be a little bit faster, of course. Now, getting back to the primary afterburner, what we can do is take our smoke layer and duplicate it. So we'll hit Edit, Duplicate. So now if we go to the options, let's change it from smoke to afterburn. And just make sure that the names perfectly match and hit OK. And so now you can see we have smoke coming from the middle. And now in this case, we can maybe make it a little thicker, maybe do a different particle type. So let's turn the opacity up here and change it from a sphere to a cloudlet. And then come down and go to the shading and turn on shadowlet from main particle. So this will just add a little bit of shading. Check that out. That's very cool. And then we can play around with maybe the particles per second, lower this down a bit, and maybe add a little more feathering to it, and maybe bring the size down just a touch. So that's the main idea. And then we can turn the motion blur back on and see that result. Maybe some color correction could be in order. One way we could do that is in the shadowlet settings. We could change it to maybe like a dark blue to match the ambient color of the scene. Let's see if we can get that to. You kind of see that change a little bit on the light in that shadow area. So that looks a lot better. But that's the idea. Obviously we can turn up the opacity of this to see it better for the tutorial, but I would encourage you to check out some real examples. So do a Google search for, like jet trails or contrails and things like that. And you'll find some cool looking like references that you can try to emulate using particular. So, some really cool different stuff, just to make the composite look better. So always think about how does a real jet do this, and how does the lighting look, and how can you make this seem realistic? So always be thinking about ways to make it look more realistic. Pretty cool. And again, if you set the velocity from motion to a negative value, it'll actually shoot away from the point and create a faster looking trail. And obviously speed it up and give it a really nice swift camera movement so that these jets look like they're moving fast. You don't want it to look like the jets are moving slowly. So spend some time, getting a really nice dynamic animation. And this is really the key to making this look fun. All right, guys, thank you for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. My name is Andrew Kramer, and we will see you next time.